The blood hadn't even had time to settle into the grout of the marble floor when Adaeze realized she was still gripping her braided leather belt like a lasso, chest heaving, standing over 3 men in tailored suits who were very much no longer standing. Her emerald wrap dress, the one her mother had sent from Lagos for her birthday, had a streak of someone else's blood across the hem. Her twist-out was completely destroyed. 1 gold hoop earring swung from her left ear, the other was somewhere on the floor. Her grocery bags had exploded across the lobby like a piñata, avocados rolling toward the potted fern, a container of egusi soup split wide open and pooling across the tiles. "Ma'am, please stay calm," one of the building security guards pleaded in Korean, his radio shaking in his grip. Adaeze looked at the men groaning on the floor. She looked at her belt. She looked at the security guard. "They started it," she said in flawless Korean, her Igbo accent folding around the syllables like silk ribbon tied in a bow. That's when the elevator opened. Shin Jae-ho, known in Seoul's underworld as Heuk Bom, the Black Storm, the man who held the Eastern District's criminal infrastructure together with ruthless precision and an unsettling calm, stepped out in a charcoal brioni suit. He took in the lobby, he took in his wife, he took in the 3 men and the egusi soup and the avocados. For 4 full seconds, he didn't move. Then the muscle in his jaw ticked. "Adaeze," he said, in that particular tone of voice, the one that usually preceded someone else's very bad evening. "Why are you holding your belt, darling?" "Okay, so," she smoothed down her dress and cleared her throat, "there's a completely reasonable explanation." "That's Do-chan Woo," he interrupted, pointing at the largest unconscious man. "He holds a black belt in 3 disciplines." "He clearly wasn't trained in dodge the belt," she muttered. Jae-ho's second, Park Sunu, stepped out of the stairwell, took 1 full look at the scene, pressed his lips together so hard they disappeared, and made a sound in the back of his throat that was definitely not a laugh. "She just—" he started. "I can see what she did, Sunmu," Jae-ho said. "What I need to understand is why." 6 hours earlier, Adaeze had woken up the way she always did, tangled in Jae-ho's arms like he'd made a personal decision in the night to hold her hostage. Even unconscious, the man clung to her like she was the only solid thing in a spinning world. It made her chest ache in the very best way. 3 years married, and he still held her like she might disappear. "You're staring again," she mumbled, eyes still closed, voice like gravel soaked in henny. "You're pretty," she said, tracing the phoenix tattoo that swept from her collarbone toward her shoulder, wings mid-flight, permanent and fierce. He cracked one eye. "Handsome. Men are handsome." She said, "You look like a K-drama villain who moisturizes. Pretty and dangerous and completely mine." "Completely yours," he agreed, pulling her in until her laugh was muffled against his chest. "Don't go in today," he murmured into her hair. "Stay here. We'll order food. I'll put on that show you like." "I have 2 surgeries and a consult." "People's hearts can wait 1 day." "Jae-ho." "My heart can't wait. It only works when you're in the building." She pulled back and looked at him. "You've been watching too many dramas." "I live in one," he said, completely serious. "You're the lead. I'm the brooding second male lead who wins." Adaeze laughed so hard her eyes watered. She kissed him 3 times, soft and quick, and climbed out of bed. He watched her the way he always did, like she was a proof of something he couldn't quite believe the math on. She'd never gotten used to it. She hoped she never would. "Home by 7, she promised. 6. 7. I'm stopping at the market." "Fine," he sighed, like she'd announced a great tragedy. "But get those plantains from the old man on the corner, not the supermarket ones." "You can't even taste the difference." "I absolutely can." By the time she'd showered and dressed in her scrubs with her wrap dress tucked into her bag for after, Jae-ho was at the dining table in gray joggers and nothing else, reading his tablet and eating fruit he definitely had someone else prepare. He was taking full credit with the posture alone. "For the most feared man in Eastern Seoul," Adaeze said, stealing a piece of his mango, "you are incredibly domestic." "Only for you," he said, catching her hand and pressing his lips to her knuckles. The city gets the storm. You get the man. And that was the whole truth of them. The agreement written nowhere but held everywhere. She didn't ask what happened in his world. He didn't bring it home. She was his exhale. He was her anchor. And as long as those worlds stayed on separate shores, they were perfect. They had been perfect for 3 years, until the O syndicate decided to go fishing in water that wasn't theirs. Adaeze's day had been exactly the kind she loved. She'd replaced a tricuspid valve in a 60-year-old grandmother who'd cried when she told her she was going to be fine. She'd mentored 2 terrified first-year residents who kept dropping things and apologizing. She'd made the entire cardiology floor laugh during lunch by describing how she'd accidentally signed up for a K-pop cover dance class, thinking it was aerobics, then stayed the whole month because she was too proud to quit. She'd left the hospital feeling that particular satisfied exhaustion that reminded her why she'd given up sleep and weekends and normal social hours to become a heart surgeon. She'd stopped at the international market near Hongdae, chatting with the woman who always saved her the good stockfish and slipped her extra crayfish because, she said, any woman keeping a dangerous man gentle deserves good soup. She'd found Jaeho's favorite Japanese whiskey. She'd bought sunflowers because their penthouse needed color. She was thinking about what they'd watch tonight. His taste ran toward action thrillers, hers toward slow burn romance, so they usually settled on something with both kissing and explosions, which satisfied neither of them but made them laugh, when she walked into the lobby of their building and heard the words that should have made her keep walking. Where does the wife work? What time does she usually come home? 3 men in expensive suits were crowding the front desk. The young receptionist, barely 23, looked like she was calculating the distance to the emergency exit. Everything about those 3 men's energy was wrong, predatory in the specific way of men who'd never been told no by anyone who mattered. Adaeze had never been good at walking past wrong. "Excuse me," her voice carried the exact pitch she used when a resident was about to make a mistake and didn't know it yet. "Can I help you gentlemen with something?" The tallest one turned. His smile had all the warmth of a security camera. "You're her, Heckbaum's pretty little import." Adaeze blinked once, then twice. "First of all," she said, setting her grocery bags down slowly, "my name is Dr. Adaeze Shin. You will use it. Second, I was born in Enugu and raised in London. The only thing I imported was myself, and I did it on a full scholarship. Third," she tilted her head, "what do you want?" "We have a message for your husband, since he's been ignoring our calls," the second man said. "Then leave a message with his office like people with basic social skills," she said pleasantly. "His assistant's name is Mira. She's very efficient." The third man reached out and closed his hand around her arm. Not violently, just proprietarily, like she was a door he had the right to open. She looked down at his hand. In her head, her grandmother's voice arrived from across the ocean and 14 years of memory. "Any man who puts his hands on you without invitation gets the lesson of his life, Nwama. Use what you have." What Adaeze had, hanging from her shoulder bag, was the thick braided leather belt Jaeho had bought her in Marrakesh. Heavy brass buckle, beautiful and sturdy as it turned out, extraordinarily effective as a correctional device. She dropped the groceries. She unthreaded the belt in one motion, and then she swung. The first strike caught the man holding her across the forearm. He yelped and released her immediately. She swung again before he'd finished yelping. The second man, Do Chanwoo, with his 3 martial arts black belts, lunged forward and she caught him across the wrist with the buckle end. He made a sound she'd never heard a grown man make before. The third pulled a knife, which should have frightened her and would have if her brain was operating somewhere beyond rational thought, somewhere in the pure, hot frequency of righteous fury. She snapped the belt at his wrist exactly like she'd seen people do in movies and thought could never work in real life. The knife skidded across the marble and disappeared under a bench. And then she just kept going. Every sideways look she'd ever gotten for being Jaeho's wife and not much else, every person who's spoken to her like she was decorative, every moment she smiled through something she should have fought. It all came out through that belt, until all three men were on the lobby floor and she was standing over them, breathing like she'd just finished a very brisk run. Security arrived. Then the elevator dinged. Adaeze. Jae-ho said her name the way he said it when something had gone sideways in his world, and he was deciding how sideways. He looked at the men. He looked at the belt. He looked at the split egusi soup container. Is that our dinner? Some of it survived, she offered. Sunwoo appeared behind him, looked at the scene, and turned around to face the wall because whatever sound was coming out of him, he clearly didn't want witnesses to it. Do Chan-woo is trained in, Jae-ho started. 3 disciplines, I heard. He skipped belt day. She smoothed her dress. They started it. I know they started it. And then, without warning, Jae-ho started laughing. Not a polite laugh. A real one, from somewhere deep and surprised. The one she knew was genuine because he couldn't manufacture it. His shoulders shook. He pressed a hand over his mouth, and it didn't help. You hit him with... Sunwoo, I need the security footage. Every angle, all of it, right now. Already pulling it, sir, Sunwoo said, his voice strangled. Then Jae-ho crossed the lobby in 4 strides and put his hands on her face, tilting it up, checking her with frantic eyes that had nothing to do with the storm and everything to do with the man. Are you hurt? Did any of them touch you? Adaeze, and look at me. Are you okay? I'm fine, she said, leaning into his palms. I promise, I'm fine. They barely got close. They shouldn't have gotten into the same room. Steel slid into his voice. Everyone knows the rule. You're not part of this. Well, she said, apparently the syndicate didn't get the full memo. They will, he said, quietly, the kind of quiet that filled rooms. He took her upstairs himself. He ran her a bath. He ordered food and sat on the bathroom floor with his back against the tub, still in his suit, processing. This changes things, he said to the ceiling tiles. I know. They came here, Adaeze, to our building. They asked about your schedule. I know. I've spent 3 years keeping you safe by keeping you separate, and today it didn't work. She reached over the edge of the tub and put her wet hand on his and put his wet hand on hers. Then we stop pretending separate is the same as safe, and we figure something else out. Together. He turned his head and looked at her. You want to know about my world? I want to know enough to survive in it, she corrected. There's a difference. He was quiet. Then, some of it is very dark. Jae-ho, I watched a 26-year-old die on my table last year because her heart gave out before I could get ahead of it. I held her family together in a waiting room. I know dark. He brought her hand to his lips. You're sure? Tell me. So he did. The territories, the alliances, the power structures, the debts and the rules and who you could trust and who you couldn't and why. The violence he was capable of and the reasons he'd chosen it and the costs it carried. He told her enough, and she listened without flinching and without judging, which he'd been braced against without knowing it. By the end, his shoulders had dropped 2 inches. Okay, she said, so the syndicate violated the truce by approaching me directly. What happens? I've received their first apology already. They apologized? Do Chan-woo is telling everyone you fight like something out of mythology. They're terrified. He paused. They sent gifts. What kind of gifts? Jewelry, a handbag, and a collection of designer belts. Adaeze stared at him. Then she put her head back and laughed at the ceiling until the bathwater rippled. They sent me belts? As tribute to your weapon of choice, apparently. My life is completely insane. Welcome to mine, he said, and his smile was real and wide and just for her. The internet, as it turned out, had extensive feelings. She woke the next morning to her face on every Seoul gossip platform under headlines like Black Storm's wife takes down 3 with belt and Mystery Doctor Wife, who is she? Her colleague, Dr. Kim, had texted a string of increasingly breathless messages that began with, Adaeze, please explain yourself, and ended with, also, you looked incredible, please advise on belt sourcing. Her best friend, Chiamaka, back in London, had sent a voice note that was 45 seconds of screaming, followed by, you married a crime lord and didn't tell me, followed by more screaming. Her mother's message was simply, "Call your father. He's been on the phone with your uncle for an hour. Also, send photos." Jae-ho watched her scroll through it all with an expression of horrified fondness. Sunwoo was supposed to manage this. "You cannot manage the internet, my love. I'm a meme. Someone made a GIF," she showed him. He put his head in his hands. His phone rang. He glanced at the screen and something soft crossed his face. "It's my mother." He answered on speaker because Shin Bora did not believe in being kept at a distance. "Jae-ho-year." Her voice arrived like a warm scolding. "Your wife is on every website with a belt fighting people. Why wasn't she protected? Where were you? What kind of husband lets this happen?" "엄마, I saw the footage. 3 men. She handled all 3. Your wife is magnificent, but she shouldn't have to be. Send more people to guard her. Actually, send me the belt. I want to see it with my own eyes." Adaeze was biting her entire fist. "She's fine. I'm handling it. You better handle it. She's a doctor. She saves lives. She's too important to be fighting criminals in a lobby. That's your job." His mother paused. "Tell her I'm bringing miokguk and gamjatang. Don't argue. I'll be there in 2 hours." She hung up. Jae-ho looked at Adaeze. "My mother is coming." "Your mother loves me." "More than me, probably." He pulled her into his lap. "Okay, here's what's going to happen. I'm adding security. We talked about this. Not negotiable. Adaeze, they asked about your schedule. They knew your building. That means we have a gap and we're closing it." She pressed her forehead against his. "Fine, but I have conditions." "Of course you do. They don't hover. They don't interfere with my patients, and they look like normal human beings, not like bouncers at a very exclusive funeral. I can work with that. And I want self-defense training, real training, not just built instinct and adrenaline." He looked at her for a long moment. "You want me to train you? Unless you'd like to keep having heart attacks every time I walk out of this building alone. That is," he said slowly, "somehow the most attractive thing you've ever said to me, and you once told me you wanted to perform surgery on my chest just to prove my heart worked." He kissed her properly then, soft and consuming and full of every unsayable thing. "Partners," he murmured against her mouth. "Finally," she said. The hospital received her like returning royalty. Her residents had clearly rehearsed expressions of casual innocence that convinced absolutely nobody. Dr. Kim cornered her in the break room within 4 minutes. Every version of the story came out. Edited, responsible, appropriately vague about the nature of Jae-ho's work. She was fine. She was not a trained fighter. Yes, her husband was influential. No, she could not elaborate. Yes, she knew how to use a belt now, thank you. That skill was permanent. Her head of cardiology pulled her aside before afternoon grounds. "Adaeze, honestly, do you need anything? Time off? Additional support?" "I need my valve replacement patient's post-op numbers and a decent coffee. I'm a surgeon. This is where I make sense." And it was. 6 hours later, she finished a repair that had gone sideways in the best possible way, additional damage found, addressed, corrected, and walked out of the OR knowing she'd given someone's daughter more time. That was the whole point. That had always been the whole point. Sunwoo was waiting outside surgical. "Mrs. Shin, your husband requested I escort you."
"He requested you because he knew I'd say no to a stranger. He also said to tell you that if you refuse, he'll come himself and make, direct quote, an absolute scene that will eclipse yesterday." She sighed. "Fine, but I want the aux cord." 3 weeks settled into a new normal that was objectively not normal. Mornings began with training sessions with Jae-ho's security team in their building's private gym, where she learned pressure points and escape holds and how to read whether someone entering a room intended trouble. Jae-ho taught the evening sessions himself, which was equal parts educational and entirely distracting because the man was ridiculously competent with his hands in every context. "Focus," he said one evening, pinning her wrist. If someone grabs you from behind, sequence? Stomp, elbow, headbutt, she recited and executed it slowly. He released her with a look of pure pride that he immediately tried to make look like professional assessment. You're getting fast. I'm getting tired. She took the water bottle he offered. Are you sleeping better? When I'm not dreaming about you in danger. Jae-ho, she sat beside him on the mat. I'm standing right here. I need you to let yourself see that. He was quiet for a beat. The footage, he admitted. I keep watching it, not because I'm proud, though I am, God help me, incredibly proud, but because I see how close the third one got before you disarmed him, and I think about a half second in the other direction. And yet, here I am. Here you are. He laced his fingers through hers. I will never take that for granted, not once. The penthouse filled with flowers that week, apology arrangements from every faction in Eastern Seoul's underworld, cards offering profound respect to Mrs. Shin and promising various forms of eternal non-aggression. The O syndicate sent orchids and a handwritten note that Sunwoo read aloud with the careful expression of someone trying not to enjoy themselves too much. Do Chan-woo sent a personal message. He'd told everyone he'd faced a warrior. He was not exaggerating, he wanted her to know. The man I hit is giving me a review, she said. 5 stars, very immersive experience, would not repeat. Then came the Friday she'd promised herself. Dr. Kim's apartment, her friends, wine, and exactly no discussion of belts or crime lords or unsolicited viral fame. It lasted 18 minutes. They'd just gotten through the second pour when Adaeze's phone buzzed. Don't panic, but Sunwoo is outside Kim's building. New threat, Ryu faction. Stay inside, give the all clear before you move. She looked at the message. She looked at her friends, wine glasses raised. She thought about being the person who waited in the safe room while her husband sorted her danger. I have to go, she said. Dr. Kim stood immediately. Are you safe? Working on it. Don't wait up. Sunwoo tried to take her directly home. She redirected him to a private restaurant in Yongsan, whose back room didn't officially exist. He called Jae-ho. There was rapid Korean. Then, he says absolutely not. Tell him I said I can say that to his face. More Korean, this time longer. Then Sunwoo exhaled and drove. She found Jae-ho in the back room with his lieutenants and 2 men on their knees who looked like they would have preferred to be literally anywhere else. The room temperature dropped 2 degrees when she walked in. Jae-ho's expression did something complicated. You shouldn't be here. Yet here I am, which is becoming something of a theme. She looked at the kneeling men. Are these the ones who mentioned my name? One of them looked up at her and actually made a sound like a small, frightened animal. They suggested using you as leverage, Jae-ho said quietly. They discussed your hospital schedule, your route home, your relationship with your mother visiting from London. Each sentence landed like something heavy being set down. They thought discussing my wife's vulnerability would be useful to them. Adaeze felt cold anger settle behind her sternum, clean and clarifying. Can I speak to you privately? In the hallway, he held her face immediately, checking her. She stopped him. I'm fine. What were you going to do? He met her eyes. Whatever was necessary. Jae-ho, were you going to kill them? I haven't decided.
She took a slow breath. This was the dark. This was the part she'd agreed to understand. Don't, she said. Not for me. Adaeze. I'm a heart surgeon. I spend my life trying to keep beating hearts beating. I cannot be the reason hearts stop, even terrible ones. She held his gaze. Scare them. Ruin them. Make them understand that I am untouchable for the rest of their natural lives, but let them walk out. He pressed his forehead to hers, breathing roughly. You ask hard things. You love that about me. I love everything about you, even when it's inconvenient. He kissed her once, fierce and brief. Okay, your way. Back in the room, he addressed the kneeling men with the particular cold precision that had earned him his name. My wife has asked me to let you live. You will spend the rest of your lives grateful for that fact. You will leave Seoul by morning. You will spend every conversation you have for the rest of your lives telling people that Shin Adaeze is untouchable. If either of you ever surfaces in this city again, if I ever hear your names attached to anything related to my wife, this conversation ends very differently. Do you understand?" They understood. They thanked him. Then he tilted his head toward Adaeze. They looked at her like she was something beyond their experience. "Thank you, Mrs. Shin." "Don't thank me," she said. "Be better. Stop seeing women as leverage. Stop seeing any person as a means to an end. And if I ever hear differently," she smiled pleasantly, "I have a very good belt collection now, and I've been training." They left faster than seemed physically possible. Jae-ho watched them go and then turned to her with something in his expression she couldn't quite name. "You just threatened 2 grown criminals with accessories." "And they believed me?" "Everyone believes you." He shook his head slowly. "You know what people are going to call you now? If you say belt warrior, I was going to say the storm's thunder, because I'm the black storm, but you're what makes me worth fearing." He pulled her close. "I love you, entirely, completely, more than I have words for in either of our languages." "I love you too," she said into his chest, "even the scary parts." "Especially the scary parts?" "Don't push it." That night at home, wrapped in each other on the couch, she told him what was shifting in her, that she didn't want to be separated anymore, not from who he was, not from what he carried, not because she wanted his world, but because she wanted him, all of him, and that required honesty between them. He listened. He said yes. He said partner, like it meant something sacred, because it did. His mother arrived the next morning with enough food to host a small gathering and the energy of a woman who had raised a storm by herself and was not impressed by anyone's idea of difficult. She settled into the kitchen, overrode Adaeze's protests with a look, and served them both before pointing Jae-ho with a spoon. "More security on her. I'm not discussing it." Then she pointed the spoon at Adaeze. "And you fought well. My mother would have liked you." She paused. "What did you hit them with exactly? Show me the belt." Jae-ho dropped his head into his hands. Adaeze showed him the belt. Shin Bora examined it with the seriousness of a woman assessing a weapon. "Good weight, good buckle, smart." She handed it back. "I'll bring you one from Busan. I know a good leather craftsman. Better for wrist action." She said this like she was recommending a good vegetable market and returned to her soup. After she left, trailing full hearts and promises to return with more food, Adaeze curled into Jae-ho's side and laughed softly into his shoulder. "Your mother just offered to upgrade my combat accessories." "She's never done that for anyone. You're her favorite person in the world, including me." "I know. I'm not even upset about it." "You shouldn't be. She raised you right." Tilted her head up. "Partners?" He kissed her forehead. "Partners. You tell me when I'm being overprotective. That'll be often. And I will tell you when you're being reckless. I'm never reckless. I'm decisive. You fought 3 armed men with a fashion accessory. Decisively." He laughed, the full, real one, her favorite sound in either of their languages. A week later, she performed a surgery that started routine and stopped being so 40 minutes in. She was in the OR for 7 hours. She didn't think about belt incidents or viral moments or the weight of existing in 2 worlds. She thought about the 16-year-old girl on her table and what the next 60 years of her life could be if Adaeze's hands were precise and her judgment was clear. When it was over and she walked into the waiting room and told that girl's parents she was going to be fine, the mother grabbed her and cried into her shoulder, and Adaeze felt under all the exhaustion and adrenaline, completely certain about who she was. Not the storm's thunder, not a meme, not a legend.
Dr. Adaeze Shin, heart surgeon. She fixed hearts for a living. Everything else was just the extraordinary texture of the life she'd built around that purpose. Jae-ho was awake when she got home, waiting. He took one look at her and opened his arms without a word. She walked into them and stayed there while she told him everything. The surgery, the fear at the 40-minute mark, the parents' faces. the particular satisfaction of holding a life back from the edge and winning. He listened with his whole body, his arms solid around her, asking small questions in the right places. "You're astonishing," he said when she finished, "every single day." "I'm tired and I smell like a hospital." "You're astonishing and tired, and you smell like the person who saves knives while I'm busy doing the opposite, and somehow you make me want to deserve that contrast." He tucked a loose lock behind her ear. "I love you, Adaeze, past what I can say clearly." "I love you too," she said, "dramatic crime lord with a soft center and all." "Only you get the soft center." "I know, I'm keeping it." They ate too much, watched a romantic comedy that made Jae-ho pretend he wasn't invested, until the ending made him call the writing thoughtful, and fell asleep on the couch under a blanket she'd brought from home, the weight of both their worlds quiet for a few hours. 6 months after the lobby, the headline read, "Dr. Adaeze Shin opens Seoul's first free cardiac clinic for underserved communities." The funding was anonymous. Jae-ho's expression when she pointed this out was perfectly composed and completely unconvincing. The volunteers were real, the mission was real, and on opening day, Adaeze stood before cameras and journalists and community members in the same gold hoops she'd been wearing the day everything changed, and said, "Every heart is worth saving. Not some, not the ones who can afford it. Every single one. That's what we're here for." In the back of the room, Jae-ho stood beside Sanwoo and watched his wife command a room full of people who had no idea they were in the presence of a woman who had become, in the last 6 months, genuinely mythic in 2 completely different worlds. Sanwoo leaned over quietly. "The syndicate sent flowers and another apology. It's been 6 months. They can keep apologizing. It's good for their character." Jae-ho found him after, eyes bright, slightly breathless with the aliveness of having done something that mattered. "Did you see? We did this." She stopped herself. "I did this. You wrote checks. Very meaningful checks. From mostly questionable sources." "Mostly," she repeated, with a look. "Largely," he amended. She kissed him in front of everyone, and he let her because he would let her do anything she wanted, always, forever. That was just the situation they were both very comfortable with. That night, he left a box on their bed. Inside, a belt, butter-soft leather, hand-braided, brass buckle with a small phoenix etched into the face. The card read, "For my brilliant, infuriating, extraordinary wife. May you never need this, but if you do, make it a story worth telling. I love you past words. Yours entirely, Jae-ho." Adaeze laughed until she cried, holding the belt with both hands, shaking. He found her like that. "You're unbelievable," she told him. "I'm in love," he said simply. "It makes people strange. You were already strange, and you love me for it." "I really do." Somewhere in Seoul, in the space where a surgeon's bright world and a crime lord's dark one had collided and decided, against all sensible odds, to simply become one, 2 people held each other and were exactly enough. Hello, besties. If this story gave you something today, let it be this. Soft and strong are not opposites. You can heal people and defend yourself. You can love someone completely and still know who you are inside that love. You can walk into the dark parts of someone else's world and come back yourself. And sometimes, when the moment calls for it, all you need is clarity, courage, and something sturdy enough to swing. If you loved this, like and subscribe, share it with someone who needs a reminder that they're the main character, and come back for more. I'll see you next time.